Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everybody. Last month, we did stories of MCC, and we particularly focused in on Black History Month. So we interviewed a lot of African-American and African brothers and sisters in our community. This month is Women's History Month. So what we thought we would do is focus in on some of the sisters of MCC and do stories of MCC. So this month, we'll have a couple of different talks with some sisters that have been part of MCC, that are part of MCC, some unique stories. So inshallah, we'll get started. Our first guest for this podcast event is Sister Aamina Ali-Ahmed. Welcome, Sister Aamina Ali. Many of you that are probably watching and listening know who Sister Aamina is. Aamina has been involved with Muslim Youth Camp for the last few years, and she's been pretty much homegrown MCC product herself. So I'll get started, Sister Aamina. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family background, your family now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Walaikum salam. Yeah, so I grew up as, born in the Evanston area and grew up around MCC, and the daughter of Dr. Amir Ali and Mary Ali. So, I pretty much spent my entire life in the MCC community. So that's kind of my home now. Even though I'm now out in the western suburbs, I always feel that MCC is a place that I like to come back to. I went to UIC for my undergraduate studies and got a bachelor's in elementary education. Taught in the Chicago Public Schools for about 7 years. And then I had the opportunity to stay home and just be a mom for my kids. So I did that. And in that time, I just decided to give back to the community out here, and worked with my kids' school and with the masjid out here. For many, many years. Now, my kids are starting to grow up, go to college, and, going into different school systems. And so I'm kind of just busy with them. I've also recently become a licensed real estate agent and a personal trainer at Gaines Fit Club in Oak Brook Terrace. So it's been fun. I mean, it's been a good, I've been kind of keeping myself busy, and, I guess with my mom, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right? I am my mom's daughter, and I like to keep myself busy. So, yeah, so that's kind of my background so far.
Cool. So I know that in between your time at MCC, and I think we went to Sunday school together, but you also lived overseas.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Obviously, you were very young when that happened, but if there's anything that you remember, where you lived and whatnot.
Yeah, I was very young. I was 4 when we moved and 8 when we came back. So I am the youngest in my family, so probably my siblings have more memories. I just have the fun ones, playing with friends and going to school. But we lived in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia for 4 years. And I actually went to the Arabic section of Manar Jeddah during that time. So I was kind of thrown into the Arabic medium at that point. Then in 1985, we came back to Chicago, back into the MCC community. Cool. So yeah, it was good. I mean, I learned a lot of Arabic at that time. I wish that I had been able to hold on to it, but everybody around me speaking Urdu, I picked up the Urdu and lost the Arabic.
So you also married someone that went to Sunday school, what you went to school with. Your parents have been involved with MCC for a long time. I guess the question is that you have MCC even in your spouse. How has that kind of shaped both of you guys growing up? Not that you guys sit there and talk about MCC during your passing days, but how has that kind of shaped both of you guys as time has gone on and you guys moved on to, a different place?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do. We actually do talk about MCC and, our Sunday school days and, people in our class. And we actually have friends out here that were in our class at that time as well. That, we do see And I think that, just going back and just talking and reminiscing about MCC, I think that it just really keeps us grounded. It keeps us wanting to stay connected to the masjid, keeping our kids connected to the masjid, whether it be our local one out here or MCC. Interestingly, I was talking to my kids a while ago, and even though we they grew up here in the western suburbs, when they think of MCC, they feel very comfortable, even though that wasn't their home masjid. They have a sense of comfort and a sense of, almost going back home when we go back to MCC. And I think it really had to do a lot with my parents being so involved there, and us constantly going back. And so, just being and growing up with our community in MCC, it just really, it makes us want to keep connection with the masjid and have our kids stay connected to the masjid, during life, and have that association with the masjid.
So now I want to talk a little bit personally, and then lead into Muslim Youth Camp. So, your mom, I knew your dad, but I didn't know him that well, and he passed away a while ago. But your mom, I remember when she passed away about 10 years ago. For those that don't know, Sister Amina's mom is Sister Mary Ali, who's been involved with MCC for many years before her passing. But she was also kind of like a motherly figure, not only to a lot of the sisters growing up in the community, but also, guys that grew up. I think her unique background of being someone born and raised in America and knowing how it is to grow up in America was unique to some of the immigrant children like myself, or children of immigrants, where, our parents didn't grow up. So, you actually lived the experience of being with your mom day to day. After she passed, we had a lot of eulogies, on social media about your mom. Can you tell us a little bit about your mom and your lived experience of being raised by your mom, as opposed to what we used to see and interact with at Muslim Youth Camp or on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So it's funny because she, being very involved in the community, I just kind of was there with her. Us also being the youngest, I was always kind of the tag along. And so, I remember, having to be at MCC during, meetings or, whatever. I mean, there were times when I was there with her, and there were times when I wasn't. And it's really wonderful to, know how and learn all the different people come and tell me even now how my mom impacted their lives. And it's really beautiful to see that. And I think that seeing that through her life and seeing how she impacted people was kind of an inspiration for me. And I really love working with the youth myself. And I always asked her, what is it about the youth that, makes you always want to work with them? And for her, it always made her feel young. She was so young at heart. And she loved, adventure. She loved doing, going on these like challenge hikes at camp. And, she went to Great America with us and rode the rides as much as she could, for as long as she could, until she just couldn't handle it anymore. And then she just longed to be there. So I think that, that kid at heart that she had was something that really resonated with the youth and drew them towards her. And she was able to really, relate. And so, seeing that and seeing her, relating with the other youth, like I said, was a very, it was an inspiration for me. And, I found myself, going into elementary education. I actually did a specialty in middle school. I had a middle school endorsement to teach middle school science. And people always ask me, like, why middle school? They're such horrific kids. And I was like, no, I love middle school kids, because there's just so much life there. And I think that's something that I got from my mom, that I really enjoy being around the youth and working with them, and just sitting around and chilling even sometimes. It's nice.
Cool. So now that leads up to Muslim Youth Camp. So, us growing up in the 80s and probably early 90s, Muslim Youth Camp is a lot different than it is today. And I think probably in the early 90s, your mom kind of took it over until her passing.
Mhm.
And then, just recently in the last couple of years, last 10 years or so, you and your brother have kind of taken over that mantle. So I guess the question I wanted to know is why you, what was the, obviously this is something that your mom did, but why was it important for you or your brother or your family to kind of take over that mantle of Muslim Youth Camp? And how has it changed from what I remember it from the 1980s, from being, and what positive or negative changes has been happened over the years?
Yeah, so my brother actually was very involved with camp even while she was still there. He did a lot with boys camp and worked with her. There were others who worked very closely with my brother, and but he was very consistent and pretty much stayed on for many years before she passed. So he kind of continued that. I also pulled in another brother Thanvir Malik, to work with us as well. And so my mom passed away in 2011, December, around February or March. This is just by the grace of Allah, it just kind of fell in my lap. Nobody was really thinking about camp, and I had a couple of sisters came and approached me, and they said, "Hey, Amina, what's going on with camp?" And I kind of thought, hey, that's actually, I don't know. Let's figure this out. So we went through all of my mom's stuff, and took that year 2012 as kind of a hiatus to kind of re-gear ourselves, find a location, and start camp up again. And then we were, alhamdulillah, able to bring it back in 2013. And we've been going since then, with the exception of last year, of course. And it's something that I always thought about as my kids were growing. And actually 2012 would have been my eldest daughter's first year. She was 12 that year. And so her first year at camp at 13 was my first year back. And of course, a different role. I've gone as counselor before. And that's kind of how it fell in my lap. And it's been an experience. I worked with my mom during the time when before I actually got married. I worked with her on some of the logistics and planning for camp, so I was familiar with some of it. And then the rest of it, we just kind of had to learn as we go and find her contacts and move on at that. In terms of how it's changed, another interesting question. During the first couple of years, Layla Saeed, who's one of my head counselors and the one kind of helping me run camp while we were there, every time we worked on something, she said, "Well, your mom did it this way. Well, Mary Auntie did it this way. This is how she did it." And I said, "Okay." And we kept trying to emulate that. And then one year I realized that, with the shift and the change in leadership, there's going to be inevitably some kind of change. And my mom did what she knew, and she did what she thought was best. And that's kind of where I thought, okay, this is where we need to, if it changes, it changes. We'll try to do what she did, but at the same time, I'm not my mom, and the leadership is different. And so with that, things will change. And then also with times, as our society changes, camp is going to change, the way camp is run is going to change, the topics that we cover. Our society is so different than it was back in the 90s, and our youth have so many more things to tackle than we did as youth. And so, it was a big, huge shoes to fill. But alhamdulillah, I do my best. But I do have to say I have an amazing team behind me. The youth that also stepped up to work with me are just fantastic, and it would not function without them. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I went to camp growing up only 4 years, in 1984, 87, 89, and 1990. And it was only 1 week out of the summer. So basically 4 weeks out of my whole life. And the funny thing is that it's made such a lasting impression that I think that just kind of the rumblings that I hear about the kids going now, I think they have the same experience too. That, just that 1 week out of this year, it makes a profound impact on their life, their youth, their upbringing. That it's amazing that alhamdulillah, you guys are continuing that legacy. Last two questions, or last couple questions. I've always thought about potentially trying to do a retro camp. Have you guys ever thought about actually trying to do it the way it was done in the 80s, and having parents and their kids coming and going like we used to do, where our parents would come and go during the week?
No. It was nice. I think where we went up in Wisconsin, it was just distant. Right now we're going to Michigan, which is about another 4 hours away, so it's 4 hours the other direction. The thing is we've changed, right? As a generation of parents, our generation versus our parents' generation. I think that our parents were very involved, and not to say that we're not. We are all very involved as a community, but I think that's just that week at camp is just a time for kids to be able to get away and really delve into things that they feel comfortable talking about. We've come up with, there's been some really interesting topics at camp, but it's things that the kids are really, ready to talk about and may or may not be comfortable talking to their parents about it. And so this is a place where they can do that. Of course, I always encourage communication with parents. That's so important. But at the same time, it gives them a chance to, be with their peers, and then also have the guidance of their counselors and the elders around them to, discuss things that they, might be dealing with in their lives. At the same time, I think we stopped parents coming to camp back in the early 90s, and because it was a safety issue. I do have parents that still want to come out and visit their kid, which I'm fine with for the most part, but I usually don't let them get past the parking lot because it is a safety issue. I want to, my utmost, the biggest issue that I take on is security. And when I take 80 girls out into a campsite, I feel a big heavy weight on my shoulders. It's an amanat. It's a trust that the parents are putting in me, and I really take everything I can to keep these kids secure. And so in that respect, I don't like it when parents come out, to come out and see the camp or whatnot. Also, sometimes if I have any kind of homesickness, then it doesn't help. So. But yeah, I mean, it's different, like our camps are different now. And, back in the 80s, it was just a different time. And, it's hard to bring that back. Of course, I don't know what it was like. I was too little to remember. I was 9 the first time I went to camp. So.
So for this year, are we planning on doing a camp?
Yes. So, as you know, we canceled last year. I have been talking to the campsite to figure out what protocols they are undergoing. This particular campsite is extremely diligent and extremely picky about what they do.
There's some disconnection going on here. Let's see if we can get her back.
Can you?
Yeah,
can you
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you got, but basically, We do plan on having camp. We do have some safety protocols that we will be putting in place for COVID. The camp will look a little bit different this year. We probably will have to cut our numbers down significantly, just for social distancing purposes, and so that we can have a camp that, you know, keeps everyone safe. So I'm working with the campsite, and we'll be basically adopting their protocols, as well as having our own. Being in Michigan, we now have to be certified to hold a camp in Michigan. So besides the protocols at camp, I have to go with my Michigan regulation. And so we have a lot of various procedural things in place in terms of, you know, just logistics for the camp so that we can maintain that certification in Michigan.
Awesome. So last question. I mean, I guess we kind of brushed on some topics, but last question. Being a woman, being a sister, a girl that grew up in MCC, obviously everybody has different experiences of being growing up in a masjid or being part of a masjid, and sisters can have positive and very negative experiences. I guess the question I have for you is that growing up as a child of an MCC, being a child of MCC, going to Sunday school, what was your overall experience? Do you look back on it as positive, negative? Obviously, there's always challenges, but what was your overall experience?
I think overall positive. I mean, I have a very fond memories of going back to MCC and of my, you know, MCC Sunday school days and just being part of the youth group at MCC. I've always felt, you know, MCC to be a place where, you know, I'm heard. And even now, you guys are so easy to work with. It's great. At least from my end. You know, I have really good memories of MCC, and you know, just from my youth, I really, you know, I want my kids to have that same kinds of memories. And so I really hope that the youth of MCC now are also having, you know, have good positive experiences, inshallah.
Awesome. All right, on that note, we'll end the session. It's been about 30 minutes, but Jazakallah khair for sharing your experiences and your time with us. Inshallah, we'll see you guys next for another interview with another sister of MCC. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
All right, assalamu alaikum.